Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and hello all lifelong learners out there. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Abdul Karim alias from University Science Malaysia, and welcome to this my third video on the topic of student engagement. In my two previous videos, in the first one, I talked about the continuum of student engagement and the kind of behaviors that we should be able to observe when students are highly engaged and when students are totally disengaged, and therefore we can do a necessary intervention. And in the second video, I talk about the three interconnected dimensions of student engagement. And by having a clear understanding of these three elements or three dimensions of student engagement, which is behavioral engagement, emotional engagement, and cognitive engagement, then we should be able to design our course and our lesson effectively by integrating these three elements seamlessly. In this third video, I would like to introduce a model is called TPT, Total Participation Technique Cognitive Engagement Model, by Persida Himmele and William Himmele. I think they are husband and wife, and they are the authors of a book. The title of the book is Total Participation Techniques, TPT, and I think the book now is in the second edition. I would strongly and highly recommend you to get the book, because I think it's a very good book that you can refer to get total participation of students in your course. But if you watch my second video, when we talk about total participation is about behavioral engagement. But more than that, we want also to ensure students to emotionally engage and cognitively engage. In this model, TPT Cognitive Engagement Model, we are actually looking more on the participation and also on cognitive. But at the same time, we assume that whatever activities that we design would also engage students emotionally. So let's now look at this model in more detail, shall we? So this is the TPT Cognitive Engagement Model and Quadrant Analysis. TPT stands for Total Participation Technique, and this model is adapted from Himmele and Himmele, Persida Himmele and William Himmele, the author of this book, Total Participation Techniques. And I have drawn the diagram here to represent the so-called quadrant analysis. And by the way, this diagram is actually from my ebook, 25 ways to make your students think, and I would also encourage you to get hold of this book, because in that book you will find 25 ways you can use, adopt and adapt immediately in your course in order to engage students cognitively. So now let's look at this model in more detail. On the y-axis here we have thinking, so this is where we look at the cognitive part, and we have the low order and higher order, or low cognition and high cognition. And on the x-axis we have participation, low and high. Remember, when we talk about participation, is we are looking at the behavioral engagement. But if we design the learning activity carefully, we can also get emotional engagement there, where students would be happy and willing and always and give their best, and meaning we create a very fun and happy environment for the students to learn. That's on the emotional engagement part. But on this model, on this diagram, we are looking at on the cognitive part, cognitive engagement, and also on the behavioral engagement. So we divide the diagram here. We divide into 4 quadrants: Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. In Q1, this is where students are doing the activities that we design, but we get low participation, and we get the type of activity here is on the low cognition. In Q2, still students are doing the learning activity that is of low cognition. This is basically limited to the first 2 levels in the Bloom taxonomy, the cognitive Bloom taxonomy, where they will recall facts, things like that. But we get high participation, so we get good behavioral engagement. And although they are doing low cognition kind of activities, which is still very good, because this especially useful when we start the class at the beginning to trigger students or as a set induction, and also to prepare students. These are what we call as scaffolding, to scaffold and take them slowly before they are ready to do the more high cognition or higher order kind of activities. For example, solving complex problem, doing problem-based learning, scenario-based learning, those kind of activities that require more mental effort or higher order thinking. So that is in the Q4. We have high cognition and high participation. So although the activity requires more mental effort, more investment in the mental effort, but we managed to get high participation, meaning that we get high behavioral engagement. Ideally, you want to achieve this at least 50% of the classroom session. Students should be highly engaged and cognitively, and highly engaged behaviorally. So in other words, we always aim to be in Q2 part of the classroom session, maybe 50% of it, or maybe 30% of it, and 70% or 60% or even 50% should be in the Q4. In Q3, we have a high cognition activities, learning activities that require students to put a lot of mental effort, but unfortunately we get low participation here, and this is not ideal because we get low involvement of our students and low behavioral engagement. Although the activities is very good for them to develop and to apply their critical thinking, but only some of the students really get involved in the activity. So in other words, when we look, this is a very good model for us, for teachers, to analyze every learning activities that they design in their course, where these activities would be in terms of the student engagement. So you want to get high level of student participation, which is in Q2, in Q4, and your learning activities could be partly on the low level of Bloom taxonomy, so low cognition type of activities. This is good to get them started, to prepare them, to get them ready, to give them the necessary facts, the necessary knowledge, fundamental principle and concept before they are able to go to the higher level, which is the high cognition, and we can get high participation here. So in my book, I have explained each domain here. In Q1, for example, low cognition and low participation, this is an example of a typical teacher-centered classroom. We need some direct, of course we need some direct instructional mode. It's still okay to have part of the session, to give lectures. I still believe that we still need direct instruction, but I would say that the direct instruction part, or the lecture part, or the teaching part can be part of the debriefing or the closing part, the closure, when we summarize what the students have done in the learning activities or the tasks given to them. but of course we can also give direct instruction or lecture. But obviously we don't want to stay too long in the Q1 quadrant. This environment may be very passive setting where teachers take the lead in teaching or lecturing while students passively listen and take notes. In Q2, this is a low cognition and high participation quadrant. You are likely to see a high level of behavioral engagement here in this setting. It could be fun as well, like the students playing Kahoot, quiz, and so on. Students appear to be working on the task or collaborating with their classmates to complete it. On the other hand, deep cognitive engagement here is lacking or absent, probably due to the nature of the activity, which does not need higher order thinking. But having said that, I believe we still need to have some of the activities on the low cognition part to make sure that they have all the necessary, the essential facts, and understand essential, very important concept or principles. In Q3, and I think in Q3 we don't want to be there also. High cognition activities, very good, but low participation, and this setting is characterized by learning activities that require higher order thinking, but people are unwilling or unable to participate for some reason. So could be motivation, could be they don't have enough confidence, or so they need more assistance, maybe more scaffolding maybe here. So it could be due to lack of enthusiasm, so there's motivation aspect, and or because they need some aid from their teachers. In this case, teachers may be required to provide scaffolding for students, and I have one section in the book discussing about scaffolding. Right, in Q4, this is where at least we want to have 60% or 70% of time in the classroom session to be here. Q4 is high cognition, so this is where we can design our learning activities to engage students cognitively in higher order thinking. So in my ebook, I have 25 ways, 25 techniques that teachers can use immediately with the lesson plan, everything. That can be used for higher order or high cognition activities, and we want to get high participation here in Q4. So this is, after all, the subject of this book. I'm talking about my book here, a highly active classroom with a high level of cognitive engagement. In this setting, students are engrossed in the immersive learning environment and actively thinking about completing the work independently or collaboratively with their classmates. Thus, this classroom setting is an active learning environment that all teachers should strive for while mindful of a possible cognitive overload. Alright, so I think that's about all that I want to share in this video, the TPT cognitive engagement model and quadrant analysis. Please refer to my previous 2 videos if you want to learn more on the earlier part on the continuum of student engagement and the 3 dimensions of student engagement. So I hope I have given great value for your time, and I hope you have learned something here. And check out my ebook because I believe it's very, very useful for educators, especially if you are looking for techniques that you can use for higher order cognitive engagement. So I'll see you in another video in this series of student engagement. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.